Welcome back to Sanur Diaries. I had to leave Bali. It's not something I expected. It's not something I wanted, but it's fact. That's what's happened. And I'm now trying to deal with that situation and trying to figure out how I can get back to Bali now. I just wanted to share this story, not as a complaint, but as just, I guess, an idea of what can happen when you live in a foreign country. That things don't always go to plan, and visa issues around the world are pretty complicated. And we sometimes, as Australians or as Europeans or Americans, we sometimes forget that visa issues for most of the world's population are pretty complicated, and sometimes we run afoul of those problems as well. So Indonesia recently introduced a new system for the extension of residency visas. I think it was in just December or January, and they're trying to merge an old system with a new system. And often with these new systems, you have teething problems, but the problem is that my extension had to happen just as all this merging was happening. And ordinarily, when I go and extend my own visas, I do everything myself. I basically don't use agents to do anything because the systems are pretty good, and I've had pretty good success over the years in doing things myself. But in this case, what's happened is that somehow my old accounts haven't merged properly, and my visas have been attached to the wrong accounts, and there's been some sort of mess up in the system. And part of it could be my fault for, logging in incorrectly or whatever. But the bottom line is there is a complication in the system that couldn't be solved. Now, I went through a lot of different processes to try and resolve it. I went through the help desk with immigration. I actually went down to the immigration office myself and spoke face to face to them, and they said that they cannot help anymore, that everything must be done online, and there is no chance of being helped face to face. The online help desk were not very helpful because it's quite a complicated thing that doesn't fall within all the boxes. They didn't really know how to help. I mean, they would just say, "Oh, just reset your password and it'll be okay," and those sorts of things. I even went to a visa agent, and they wanted to charge 16 million rupiah to help fix the problem, and I was going to pay it because I needed this to be resolved. And they tried, but they couldn't do it. In the end, they said, "I can't take your money because I actually can't help." And this is all happening over the course of a few weeks, and time's just running out. And I get to the point where I think, this is not going to be solved. My visa's not going to be extended here. So, unfortunately, I had to book a ticket to leave the country. So I want to be really clear here. Because of all these complications, I ended up overstaying my visa by 6 days. And in Indonesia, if you overstay your visa by a day, it costs you 1 million rupiah per day. If you overstay by up to, I think it's more than 60 days, you'll be arrested and detained and deported and blacklisted and all that sort of stuff. But before that sort of period of time, there's just a fine. But I mean, if you overstayed by 30 days, you'd be up for 30 million rupiah, which is an awful lot of money when it's pretty simple for, if you're on a tourist visa, for example, just to extend it, or in a worst case scenario, fly out of the country and fly back. Now, in my case, because of my circumstances, I had to leave the country because every day that you stay longer, it's going to cost you 1 million rupiah. So you really have that incentive to leave the country. So I totally respect Indonesia's visa regulations. It's just something you need to be aware of. If you're in a foreign country, Indonesia, Thailand, any other country, and you're having visa difficulties, whether it's your fault or not, you still have to abide by those visa conditions. And if you overstay like I did, you're going to have to pay a fine. Now, here's where the story becomes more than just about me. My wife, Susan, is Indonesian, as most of you will probably know, and we travel around the world quite a lot. We go to a lot of different countries. Now, as an Indonesian, she has visa issues all the time. Like almost every country that we want to go to, she needs to apply for a visa for, and the process is never simple. Never simple. One of the easiest ones probably is Australia because it's all online these days and they give you a pretty good tourist visa if you're approved. But some countries, like the European Union, an absolute nightmare. For Susan to apply for a visa, say if we wanted to go to Greece, Susan has to fly to Jakarta, stay there for maybe a couple of nights while she submits the documents and all this sort of stuff. And there's a whole list of documents that it's never right, and you have to get stamps on this and signed that and printouts of this. It has to be official bank statements and a letter from your employer. But if you're not employed, you have to have another document. Anyway, it's really complicated. So Indonesians face these sorts of complications all the time, and people around the world face visa issues all the time. And we as Australians or as Europeans or Americans, we sometimes forget that our own countries make these visas very difficult to get for other people. So when we face these issues, we need to put it into a little bit of context that it's not unique to us, that other people face these issues as well. So yeah, that's why I sort of, I'm not too frustrated or upset about it, because I know that this sort of stuff happens to everyone, especially Indonesians when they're traveling overseas. So I guess the point of this video is that we need to have a reminder every now and then that when you live in a foreign country, or even if you're just visiting a foreign country, things don't always go as planned, and you need to expect the unexpected. When you move to a foreign country, you're not really familiar with how visas work and that sort of stuff. It's a whole new learning process for us. Even though we've lived our lives without having to worry about visas too much, when you come and live in a foreign country, a residency visa or some other, a retirement visa or whatever it is that you might come to Indonesia on, is not as straightforward as it might appear. And there are going to be hiccups. And sometimes when things don't go to plan, you're going to have a plan B. Or if you don't have a plan B, you're going to have to make one up really quickly, which is what I've done. I'm here in a hotel room, not in Indonesia, filming this because things didn't go to plan. So my advice to anyone who has visas or whatever to deal with when you're in Indonesia is either use an agent who's going to solve everything for you. You'll pay through the nose for it. Or if you're doing it on your own, make sure you double check your logins, months in advance, so you can get everything ironed out prior to the actual application process. Part of my problem was that I expected everything to go smoothly, as it had done for the past decade, and I got into the system and immediately faced roadblocks and errors and that sort of stuff. And if I'd resolved some of those issues maybe a month or two earlier, it might have helped. Although with that system migration, maybe it would have been a problem anyway. And for anyone who's ever applied for a visa, whether it be for Indonesia or whether you're an Indonesian applying for another country, I have a lot of respect for you, because visas are a nightmare to apply for. They're stressful. They sometimes cost us a lot of money. Sometimes, like as an Indonesian, you need to go and book a plane ticket before you've even had your visa approved. And if it gets denied, you'll lose your money on that. I mean, that's happened to us a few times as well. Not just because Susan was rejected for a visa, but because sometimes there are barriers put in your way that are completely unexpected. And sometimes for me, living in Indonesia, that happens as well, because we don't really expect something that's coming along. And that's part of living abroad, isn't it, really? It's not always smooth sailing. It's not always going down to the beach, having a swim, sipping on a coffee and eating some masakan padang. There's the ups and downs. And that's what makes life interesting, really, isn't it? The ups and downs. So I'm not too upset about it, and I'm still working on how to get back to Indonesia. Hopefully I'll be back there soon. Another word on that new system. That new system is actually the immigration department's attempt to make the system even better and more streamlined and easier for you to do on your own. It's actually trying to make the whole system fully electronic, which is great news for anyone who likes to apply for visas on their own. It means you don't have to be going back and forth to the immigration office as much as you used to. And you can upload all your documents, and you have your guarantor or your sponsor putting documents in there. You put your own documents in there. So it's actually a step in the right direction. Hopefully once those bugs get ironed out, everything will be okay. So my expectation from here is that I'll resolve my visa issues while I'm here in snowy Japan. I'm in Japan at the moment and it's snowing. So that's my expectation, that I'll have my visa issues resolved, and that next time you see me, I'll be behind, hopefully that Sanur diary sign will be down there somewhere, and I'll be saying, welcome back to Bali. So let's transport to Bali.
Welcome back to Bali. So Sanur diary sign is right there in the background. Thank God for that. I've managed to resolve most of my visa issues, so I'm back in the country, no issues now. I'll continue with my videos on a weekly basis as I've been doing in the past. And hopefully this will be the end of my visa issues. As I said before, the visa issues are a normal part of living in any country besides your own, because you're there as a guest. You're not a citizen yet, so of course you have to abide by the rules of the country that you're a guest in, and that's the case for me as well, even though I'm married to an Indonesian. That's just life. So that's the story of why I had to leave Bali and Now I'm back. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all things Sanur. I'll catch you next time.